Welcome to the UK's first metal detection podcast. It's All Metal Mode UK with your host from across the pond, Mr. Michael Hare.
All right, everybody, welcome to the show. You're listening to All Metal Mode UK. And tonight's special guest is Gary Cook. I'm excited to talk to him. I know he's a big XP user, and he's going to hopefully we can con him out of some settings and different things and talk to him about XP. Before we get into that, if you're joining us live, don't forget, once you click play on the show, there should be, if you're on your computer or tablet, you should see a little rectangle box come up with like a pause button and all that. Look for the little chat bubble. It looks like a little cloud, and you can join us live in chat. On your phone, I think when you hit play, or maybe even before you hit play, when you click on the show, there's a box that usually comes up, at least on my iPhone, where it's got a little chat bubble. So if you can join us in chat, we would love it. And if you got questions for Gary or me or about, just drew a blank. If you got questions about XP Deus, anything like that, join us in chat. So I'm asking a favor from all my listeners. If you could please join All Metal Mode Podcast UK in Facebook. Help me make this a good show. I need your help. Suggest guests to me if you would like to be a guest. Help me get guests if you have ideas for the show. And of course, we're talking about metal detecting. Post your finds in there. I'd love to get some interaction going in there. I'd love to get some feedback and input. If you guys have any of that, please join the group. If you don't want to join the group, I know there's a million metal detecting podcasts and stuff, or metal detecting Facebook groups and stuff out there. If you don't want to join, email me with ideas and suggestions. You can do that at allmetalmode@gmail.com. And I'd love to hear people's input, what you think of the show, if there's anything you think we could do better, change, suggestions for guests, all that good stuff. If you're interested in metal detecting articles, you can visit allmetalmode.com, and then in the navigation bar, click articles, and that'll take you to stories and articles I've written. Always love when people read my articles and stuff, so yeah, check it out, guys, and I appreciate it. And again, please, looking for feedback and help and all that. So we are going to bring on our very special guest now. Gary, how you doing?
Hi, Mike. How are you?
I am doing great. Doing
great. Good.
I know you're you're traveling and everything else, and you just barely got in, and.
I'm currently in my hotel room at Gatwick Airport. Actually, I'm flying out early in the morning to America with the business side of me, which is I'm in the building and plumbing trade, and we got a couple of trade shows to do, and a customer to see in New York Friday afternoon, and then going on to Atlanta to do a trade show. So obviously, yeah, it was a bit of a rush getting here. The M25. Motorway or freeway, as you guys call it, was a little bit congested today, and for a short period of time I was panicking, thinking I wasn't going to be able to make the show. So yeah, it's sort of like quickly in here, log on to Skype, talk to you, and here we go. Here we are.
Here we are. Yep.
Here we
Now,
are. So I apologize if I'm a little bit, up in the air.
Little nerves going on. Yeah, I'm sure. So something I didn't get to ask you before the show. Are you bringing a metal detector here to the United States?
No, unfortunately, I think my boss who pays my wages would probably look at that in quite a negative way.
Okay.
So, I did actually send a message out to some of my friends in America who I know very well from the XP Deus USA guys, and I said, so if there is anybody in the Atlanta area who wants to look after me for an hour, by all means they can. But I think my time in America is going to be a little bit tied up with building and plumbing, I'm afraid. So no metal detecting.
Okay, I gotcha. I had to ask. I was really curious.
Maybe I am actually coming out to, again, believe it or not, sound a bit jet setting, but I'm actually coming out to New York in December for 14 days with my wife. And I have actually put a plea out to some guys out there. If there is anybody in the New York area who wants to take me out for a bit of metal detecting while the wife's using my credit card in Bloomingdale's, then by all means, give me a shout and I'll join.
That's great. Kevin Ralston, I hope I'm saying that right, said, well done on your rally, Gary, 27 pounds for charity. That's great. Yeah, inspirational. Yeah.
27,000. Yeah.
Oh, is that, I'm sorry. Is that not what I said?
27 pounds. I thought you said.
Oh, no, I might have 27,000 pounds. I'm sorry. That's okay. Yeah. I mean, hey, it's all good, but 27 pounds doesn't sound too thrilling, does it? I guess that's a huge difference.
Yeah.
And we're going
to, a couple of zeros.
And we're going to get into that here in a little bit, for sure. That's really, really neat cause and all that. But let's get kind of started on, I told you I asked some really basic questions. How long you been detecting?
I was trying to work that out the other day because it's a difficult one because it's around about 19 years, I would say I've been detecting. It could be, I've never really counted it in years. It seems to me like I've always been detecting.
Right.
If that can sort of come home with you guys, I feel as if I've always been detecting. Certainly interested in history from a very, very young age. Very young age.
I'm with you. I hadn't really thought about it, and when I started doing podcasts, some people would ask me, how long you've been detecting, and it really took me some time to sit and think back, like, well, when did it? But you're right, it feels like forever. I mean, you and I were talking before the show. I got into this because of history, just like you. I love history, and that's what got me into this and has kept my interest, because if you're into history and you go out and dig something, I know it's different for you guys. It can be thousands of years old, but even a couple hundred years for me, a button that somebody wore, that's just amazing to me, and
it is.
Yeah.
That's exactly how I feel, Mike. When I was young at school, the only two subjects I was really showed any interest in at school was sports, playing football and cricket, and history. The other subjects really was above my head. I wasn't academic enough to do maths or English and anything like that. It all seemed to just go above me. But the one thing that I was absolutely passionate about, and I absolutely loved, was history, all types of history. From modern history right the way back to Stone Age and Iron Age, and even back to paleontology. With the dinosaurs and things like that. I just loved how we've progressed as human beings, but then even further, and metal detecting, I suppose, gives us a chance to be even closer to history. You can see things in museums and you can look through glass, but metal detecting allows you to hold a piece of history in your hand, which is an absolutely incredible experience. You know, I know it's not, like you said yourself, Mike, it's not the same for you guys quite as much as it is over here for us. But if you think about it, you know, when we pick a Roman coin up over here, we're the first human being to hold that coin for 1,800 years.
Right.
That's an incredible.
Right.
When you think about it like that,
It's
an
incredible
feeling. It's an incredible feeling. You know, and some things are even older. You know, I've found things that are even older than that. And you think, well, who was that person? Why, you know?
How did they lose that? How did that end up here?
Exactly.
Yeah.
How did he feel when he realized that he lost it? You know, how gutted was he? You know, and how upset was he? And it's just, when you think about it like that, it does tend to think, wow, you know, I've got something in my hand that somebody dropped 2,000 years ago, and now I'm holding it. And it's been, and I sometimes, I don't know about you, Mike, but I sometimes like to think about all the things that have happened in man's history since that coin was dropped. So like a Roman coin in England, it's seen the Civil War, it's seen the First and Second World Wars, it's seen the Roman, you know, it's had the Roman invasion, and it's had the Saxon invasion, and so many things have happened whilst that coin's been lying in the ground.
Right.
It's almost like looking up into space and thinking, well, how many stars are actually out there? It's all it blows your mind a little bit, you know.
And I don't think you can I've never met a fellow detectorist who can explain that feeling to somebody who's never found something like that. You know what I mean? It's something you got to experience for yourself, and it's just incredible. I mean, I don't know about you, and really, honestly, I don't know what you guys find that are pretty common but old. But, you know, for us to find flat buttons, they're pretty common if you're a relic hunter, which I consider myself a relic hunter. In all my years of detecting and all my flat buttons, I still get excited when I find a flat button or a tomback or, you know, some of those simple things. And they might only be a couple hundred years old here, but, you know, again, it's been in the ground. You know, what was their life like? How were they living in you know, over here it's a little bit different. Most of our sites have iron in them. You know, from nails and stuff like that. But by the time I'm done working a field site, I will have a picture of what their life was like by what I find. And that's just an incredible feeling to me, Gary.
It is. And I have to admit, that is exactly the same feeling. Although the time difference is slightly different for you guys. You know, I'm very jealous of you guys for one thing, and that's, I have a very, very, I have a fascination with the American Civil War. It's one of the things that I like to watch films and read books on the American Civil War. I'm not an expert on it in any way, shape or form, but I would love, one of the passions that I would love to do would be to go and hunt for Civil War relics in America. Just for the history of that. But the feeling is exactly the same. You know, common finds for us and would be Roman coins. We call them Roman grots, which is a terminology that we've adopted from the archaeologists. And a grot is basically what it is. It's a coin that is very glossy and there's not a lot of detail on there. And they're very, very common over here. And to you guys, I can imagine you're thinking, oh, blimey, you know, it must be amazing to have a common find like a Roman grot. And yes, it is. I suppose we are a bit blasé about it in certain parts of the country over here because we find so many. But we're very blessed in the fact that the Romans were here for over 400 years, you know, and when you think about that as a timescale, over 400 years, imagine how many coins and artifacts and relics were dropped in 400 years.
Right.
Because if you were to go back in time now, from this moment in time now, 400 years, we would be in the 1600s. So we would be almost in Elizabethan times. So when you think about it like that, Elizabeth I, you know, going back in time 400 odd years, from then until now, that's the amount of time that the Romans were governing Britain. That's a long time, Mike. That's a long time.
Yes.
So there's millions and millions of Roman coins just scattered around. I've got a couple of sites where I detect in the county of Wiltshire where I live. And it's an incredible, because you can literally pick one up after another. And it sounds incredibly big-headed or blasé, but it's not. It's just the fact that where I live was a massive Roman settlement, all the way across that part of the country. And they were dropping coins like we would drop coins. We do.
Right.
When people ask me, questions about, relative questions to modern times, I don't know what you guys call them over in the States, but over here we have things which we call car boot sales. And basically what it is you take all of your junk from your house, you put it in the back of your car, you take it to a field, and everybody parks up in the field, opens their boot, and people come around and buy your junk from you. It's called a car boot sale. A bit like you have yard sales, I suppose, or garage sales. We actually drive to a big field, we all park our cars in the field, and we sell from the boot of our cars, hence the term car boot sale. Now, if you hold a car boot sale in the same field for 10 years, every week, you imagine how much small change has dropped in 10 years from people buying and selling.
Yep.
But you times that by 400 years, that's a hell of a lot of coins.
Right. Yeah, that is amazing. And we don't have the history, but someday I will come over there and I hope to find some, I don't even care. I would love to find something 300 years, 500 years old and have fun detecting, but,
it's amazing. I've taken out many American guys. In fact, at my dad's rally this weekend, we had a couple from Canada, and they found their very first Roman coin. And to see the look of amazement, I suppose is a good word to use, excitement, and we've become so not immune to the feeling, but become almost you've got used to the fact that I've picked up another Roman coin. Don't get me wrong, the feeling of that amazement that you've found something so old is still always there, but you almost become used to it. But to see an American friend of mine pick up his very first Roman coin, and for him to realize that coin is 2,000 years old, you think, that is the feeling that metal detecting can give you. It's that amazing feeling. And like you said before, it's almost impossible to try and describe it to someone. The best way to do it is for them to actually experience it.
Yes, I agree.
Then they'll know. Then they'll know what we're talking about.
Yeah, I think.
And it's. Yeah, sorry.
I was just going to say, I think you and I could talk history and finds for hours. I love. Yeah, we definitely connect on that because I love history. I love the research where a lot of people don't like the research. I love that. Now, my end goal is to get out there and put something in my hand from that research, but I just love it. I love history that much. So
that's right. You want to find out what that artifact was or relic was that you find, and you want to know what it was used for. Or some of them are obvious. It's a button is pretty obvious what it was used for. Right. But we find part relics. Things that were part of something. We find the list over here is almost endless of what you can find in the ground.
Right.
When you think about how long people have been using metal and making things from metal and blending different types of metal together to make other types of metal. From that time to now, the amount of different objects that are in the ground is certainly in Britain and in America. You guys have got your own different type of history, right. But the amount of things that have been made is mind-blowing because, and when you look, I'll use a Roman brooch, for instance, as an example, a Roman fibula brooch. It's an artifact that they used to hold their clothes together, and they usually came in pairs. And all metal detectorists, like guys out there who may be listening to this show at this moment, will know what I'm talking about. These are such incredible items that are made. And you think to yourself, but then when you look at it, you think, well, if I was to sit down and make one of these now, I would have if my resources, I'd have electric, I'd have natural and unnatural light, so I could carry on working into the evening. I would have tools, electric tools. I would have fine chisels. I would have metalworking things. I could have access to extreme heat almost instantaneously. These guys had none of that. Absolutely not. And they were making these amazing artifacts, these amazing bronze, silver, gold relics, artifacts. They're absolutely stunning.
Right.
And
I agree.
I wouldn't even have a clue where to start.
Right.
Where to start.
Yeah.
Even with all the technology, we've got now in our hands, these guys had absolutely nothing like that. And that they were making these amazing, beautiful objects that are just incredible items to find. And I wouldn't have a clue, not even one iota of how to begin to start making these sort of things. And that's what blows my mind. They were so incredibly clever back then,
Yes, I agree. I look at, I see stuff all the time, more over there. I'll admit more over in the UK than here, but that they find something, or you guys will find something. I'm like, my God, look at the craftsmanship. And I'm a pretty handy guy. I've dabbled in a lot of different things, and it's just mind blowing of some of the craftsmanship that went into that, and the intricate details is just, and I don't think everybody thinks like us, Gary. I think, some people just see it and they're like, whatever. But I put myself in that time with no electric and no, and everything else. They didn't have some of the modern luxuries we had, and yet they created these just works of art. Yeah, works of art.
That's all they are. Every single Roman fibula brooch that I find, every single medieval brooch or jewelry, every single one of them is a work of art in its own right. And whether it's made of gold, whether it's made of bronze, every single one is a work of art in its own right. And you look at some of the things in the museums over here, and the recent one was the Saxon gold hoard that was found. And most of the metal detectorists out there will know of the hoard that I'm talking about. And these were gold artifacts of jewelry, sword scabbards, all these things are ordained a Saxon warrior to make him look powerful, to make him look important. He had all of this gold chain on, and he had these rings and his chainmail and everything, Mike. And you think to yourself, well, they are pure works of art, and they were just amazingly made, and the detail of the animals engraved on them, and it just blows my mind. And I like you, I could talk for hours about it, and just in awe of the ancient people, because most people nowadays, like, we've got exceptionally clever people now, in different things, in inventions that we make, but these guys, they didn't have the internet, they didn't have computers, they didn't have things that could work out angles for them, and get the exact right angles. This was just all done by looking at things. And
Gary. Now we have YouTube and the internet, and these people figured it out on their own. And hey, let's pause real quick. I'm going to try to add somebody to the call. Let me see how this goes. If it doesn't work out, I apologize. We've been having some issues, but let's see. Hello.
Hi, Mike.
Hey, how's it going? You there?
It's Gary. Yeah, no, it's still Gary here, Mike.
Oh, we didn't. Okay. Well, what's going on? You got really loud. It didn't even sound like you for a second on my end. I don't know what's going on. Okay. I don't know if we can get him. Okay, hold on a second. Keep talking. Tell me more about history, man. You can talk history to me all the time, but while you're doing that, I'm gonna try to add somebody in here.
Yeah, no. It's a unless you've got the passion within you. When I talk to other people about my passion of history and things, they look at you sometimes with a gormless look on their face, and they go, "Oh, yeah, very boring. Yeah, can we go and talk about something else?" And I'm thinking, why are you not interested in this? This is where you came from. The reason why you're stood there now is because of things that happened in the past, which made you who you are and your country who you are. And whether it's a short history in terminology, like the United States, or whether it's a long progression of history like we've got in Britain, history basically determines what you are at that particular moment in time. And from the very beginning, we have evolved, and then we've progressed, and then things have happened throughout the course of history that has determined where we are as a nation and where we are as people. And I sometimes sit down and think, well, what happens if the Romans just sailed past Britain and couldn't be bothered to come and invade us? Where would we be now? Who would we be? What would we have? Because the Romans did so much for Britain. They brought order. They brought order out of chaos. We were tribal when the Romans came. I'm not saying that we weren't sophisticated, because the tribes, the Celtic tribes of Britain, were exceptionally clever people. They really were.
Hello.
I'm not saying that we were.
Hold on one sec. Gary, you
Sorry,
still
got me?
I think I've got both Garys now. Yes.
Hello. 1, 2, 3.
Oh, hey, there you go, Gary. We just brought in Gary Blackwell.
Hi, my buddy. Hello, Gazza.
How you doing, man?
Hey, fine, pal. You? I tried ringing you today, but you seem to be abroad.
I'm on my chin strap. I've just flown in from France. I'm on the road.
You all right, pal?
Yeah, really, really good. Yeah, really good. I'll have a catch up with you tomorrow, but I just thought I'd come and say a quick hello to you and Mike and see how things are going.
Yeah, we're talking history. You know what I'm like, Gaz. When I get talking, you can't shut me up.
Oh, it's going to be a long episode.
Gary, I've asked him one question, and we're still talking history. I love history too, so yeah, we're in trouble. I don't know how long of a show this might turn out to be.
I don't know how long my voice can hold out after the.
Mr. Blackwell, we got to get you on soon as well.
Yeah.
If you will if you would please come on the show, we would love that.
Absolutely. Just say when.
Okay, good. We will do that. I'll get a hold of you soon, and we will discuss getting you on. Love to have you on.
Okay. Have a great show. I'll speak to you soon.
I'll speak to you tomorrow, mate.
Thank you very much, guys. Have a good one. Bye for now.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
Bye.
See you, guys.
He's such a nice guy. I like talking to Gary. Haven't talked to him much. See, like right there, when I brought him on, hopefully it turned out okay for our listeners, but through my headphones, it sounded horrible. Everything was jarbled and messed up with both of you. But now you sound good again. I have just absolutely been plagued with Skype issues. It's just been a mess.
You're talking to the wrong man, though, when it comes to that, because I'm a complete technophobe. I have to get Gaz to sort out everything for me on my mobiles and stuff, because I'm rubbish.
Right. Well, I've been forced to learn this, so if I want to do the podcast, I got to learn. But I have deleted it, tried to go back to the older version, had to update again, then it's crashed a couple times, and it's just been a mess. But
you'll have you've got to get Gary on, because he's a top man, and he knows all. He'll forget more than I'll ever know about metal detectors. He's a top guy, and I've known him a long time. And trust me, if you want to know anything about the Deus and XP, he is the man. He's taught me a lot, and I got a lot to thank him for as well. He's probably listening, so I've got to say that. But he's a top lad, and I love him to bits, because when I had my father's memorial rally last weekend, he was one of the sponsors, and he did me proud. And without him, I could never have got it off the ground. So I owe him. I owe him so much, and he's always got my back, and I've always got his. And I would never do anything to see him hurt, because he's a good friend of mine.
I've only talked to Gary real brief moments, but he is very, very well known here in the United States, and people love him. And I've never heard a bad thing about the man. Never. Only good things and positive things. I know people who, they're not well known. They don't have a YouTube channel, and Gary has helped them. I've heard stories of him going out of his way to help people, and that's great. That's amazing. And so
that's the kind of man that he is.
We're going to give him a big head.
Yeah, well, he deserves it. He's a good. As I say, he's if he is though. That's the thing. You don't get anything else from Gary apart from, if you ask him a question, he'll help you. If he can help you, he will. There's nothing else in between with Gary. I've known him a long time, and I trust him implicitly, and I hope to. I would like to think that he would say the same about me, he is, when it comes to metal detectors, he is the man. He had his XP. He had his Gary's Detecting blog that he's, and he knows lots of different metal detectors. Whereas myself, I know a couple, but no, I have been an XP guy for a while now. I've had one since the day has come out, but sometimes I still get stuck, with certain things, and Gary will always help me. And so if you want to have a show based on XP and the Deus and get people phoning in and stuff, he is your man, because, as I say, he's top notch when it comes to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like I said, he's very well known here in the United States, and he's helped a lot of people out, and that's great. Yeah, I definitely am looking forward to having him on, and I'll reach out to him probably today. I know Luke's talked to him a little bit, and about getting him on. I just, why we're talking highly of people, Luke has helped me so much, ArchMD Mag in general, but Luke just, I owe everything to that guy. He is such a great guy, and I so appreciate him, and I hope he knows that. Dave Sadler, he's just a fantastic guy, and I just think the world of him. And they love metal detecting. Luke calls, we talk pretty regular. I think sometimes it's almost too much for him because I ask so much of him, but he's always just helpful. But we get to talking about metal detecting and stuff, and we have a good time.
That's it, Mike, isn't it? The thing is, I've got some exceptionally good friends in the metal detecting world, and sometimes, just talking metal detecting, sometimes I think with the offset of Facebook and social media, don't get me wrong, Facebook and social media is a great thing, and we wouldn't be having this conversation if it wasn't for social media and all its aspects. But I sometimes get a little bit despondent when I look at the forums and I look at metal detecting. Sometimes it's becoming almost like a battleground. You've got people arguing, oh, my machine's deeper than yours, my machine's better than yours, my machine is faster than yours, my machine can do this, yours is. But they're forgetting about what the actual passion is. The passion is metal detecting. Doesn't matter what brand of metal detector you use or how much you can afford to spend on a metal detector. We haven't all got pockets of money that we can go out and spend thousands of pounds on metal detecting equipment. When I first started in the hobby, I couldn't afford to spend very much. I didn't know if I was going to enjoy it. I liked history, so I went out and I bought a cheap metal detector. But I started finding a few bits and pieces, lumps of iron and just general stuff that nowadays you would think put in your trash bag, but it was history. And I think we're losing a little bit of, as detectorists, as we call ourselves over here, and metal detectorists, we're losing that aspect of the hobby where it's becoming more about machine bashing and arguing and about what machine's better than others. When you go to some of the rallies now, it's all about, you've got to have test beds laid out, and people have got to test their machines on the test bed to see if that machine can get that target, that machine can get that. And you think to yourself, and I turned around at a rally a few weeks ago, and I just turned around to somebody, I said, they were shouting at me, Cookie, are you going to come and try your machine on my test bed? And I said, my test bed is out in the field. That's where I have my test. I don't need to find pre-buried things that are at a certain depth that is there. You know what angle in the ground they're buried. You know whether they're buried next to certain things. You're in disturbed ground. My proper test bed is out in the field, metal detecting. That's where I learn my machine. That's where I learn my. Don't get me wrong. There is a time and a place for test beds. Of course there is, but I think we're moving off topic a little bit with what we actually are as a group of people. We are metal detectorists. Who cares what machine we use? We should all have one. We've all got a passion for history. Let's just forget, try not to get into this machine bashing or arguing about what's best, and get back to basics, which is a love of history, a love of being out in the field, getting your thoughts together, put your headphones on. You're away from everything. You're away from all the everyday hustle and bustle of life. You're on your own, or sometimes with a friend, and you're in a field, and you never know what that next target is going to be. And that is what the passion is, not spending $2,000 or $3,000 or pounds on the best metal detector on this planet because that's the one that's going to give you 2 foot depth or whatever. It's the passion of the history, finding the history that is what it's all about, Mike. That's for me anyway. People have forgotten, I think, what the actual aspects of metal detecting is all about.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I'll tell you, I have left Facebook groups. I've got All Metal Mode and All Metal Mode UK, obviously, and on 2 occasions, I've had somebody come in and kind of say something smart aleck about somebody's metal detector or something, and I will kick you right out in a second. I don't like that stuff. I remember when I don't know that I should really say this out loud, but I'm going to. When the AT Max come out, I was part of a whites group. And Garrett, I'm in a lot of the different metal detecting groups and different manufacturer groups, and the one whites group I was in, I mean, they were just saying horrible things, not only about the detectors, but about the people that swing Garretts and everything else. And I wrote a thing and I said, you guys should be ashamed of yourself. This isn't how we act. This isn't what it's about. And I said, I'm going to leave this room. And, this went on for almost 2 weeks. And, nobody stopped it. Nobody said, the admin. And I thought, I don't want any part of this. This isn't what this is about. And so I agree with you 100%.
It isn't what it's about, is it? It's at the end of the day, any machine on the market today, no matter how much you spend, if you go out in the field, you're going to find things with it. And that's what the passion should be, Mike. You know, forget about the bashing at each other up and the trash talk and all of this sort of rubbish that goes on in metal detecting now. You know, just get back to what we love, which is getting in a field, getting muddy and searching for relics and coinage and history. And that's it. But that's how I see it anyway. That's how I'd like to see it. If anybody says to me, Gary, what do you think of the new Mine Lab, or what do you think of the new Garrett? I say they're damn good machines. They're damn good machines. But are they better than the machine that I like? In my personal opinion, I have my favourite. But that doesn't mean to say that it's the best. It's just that I personally like that.
It works best for you.
Exactly. That's exactly it. It works best for me, and I'm tuned into the Deus. Other people are tuned into other metal detectors. I've got some very close friends who use Mine Labs, but do I constantly belittle them and tell them that their machine is not very? No, of course I don't, because that's not what it's all about. And I think sometimes there are people in the hobby who can be a little bit over the top when it comes to. There's nothing wrong with being passionate. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. If you're passionate about the manufacturer of machine that you use, absolutely. I'm passionate about the Deus. Of course I am, and so's Gary. But you don't. There's a line that you shouldn't cross, Mike. And I've seen the line crossed on many, many occasions, and it disheartens me when I see it.
Yeah, I'm with you so much. Gary, I will hunt with somebody that's brand new to, another thing I see, I guess I'm getting a little ahead of myself, is, nobody wants to help the new guy with the beginner machine and all that. I see some stuff like that, where there's some bad mouthing and stuff like that. I will go out with a guy if you've got the passion and you're doing it for the right reasons. On rare occasion, I've ran across people here in the United States that it's all about money, and I don't want no part of that. Personally,
No, exactly.
I don't. But if they're passionate about the history and the hobby, I will take you out. I'll show you how to use your detector. I'll help you. I love nothing more than to watch somebody make their first good find and watch.
Great, isn't it?
Right,
it's great.
It's amazing, and working with them. And within a couple weeks, watch how they progress. And I love all that. I love all that about the hobby. I do.
Exactly. Well, last weekend, I'll give you an example. At my organised rally that I did for, I've mentioned before. Excuse me, Mike, I'm just going to cough. We had some people there who were extremely nervous. It was their first rally. They hadn't been detected for very long, and they came up to me and said, "Oh, we're really, we don't know what do we do at a rally." I said, "Well, you talk to people, But she came back, and her husband came back to me and spoke to me about 2 or 3 hours later, and she said, "You guys are so friendly. People were coming up to me in the field, and we were talking, and they were putting in some settings for me." And she said, "I don't know what I was worried about." I said, "Exactly. That's what it says. We're like one big family. We're a camaraderie of guys and girls together." And there was a young lad with his dad. He had this metal detector that was obviously it wasn't an expensive one, but he was absolutely loving it. And he made his first Roman coin find with it. And you can't replace that.
No.
You cannot. When you look at that, it was an emotional weekend for me anyway, because obviously it was a year of my father's passing. So it was an emotional weekend anyway. But it almost literally brought a tear. And I'm not afraid to say it. It almost brought a tear to my eye to see that boy with his dad making their first Roman coin find. And
absolutely.
It brought back memories of me with my father and everything. Of course it did. But it brought a tear to my eye because the look of excitement on his face when he came running into the barn that we had, and he put the coin down on the finds table. That was an incredible feeling and moment to see.
I am sure.
Sometimes I think that's That's what we're about. That's what metal detecting is all
Yeah.
about. That's right there in that moment.
And I think us that feel that way, we need to work on some of these people with the bad attitudes and try to talk to them in a, I'm sure you see it as well. But hey, overall, I think this hobby is filled with some of the most amazing people. But I have been so fortunate to meet so many good people. Hey,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I got to ask you something because Luke is going crazy. I'm not sure what he means. Ask Gary about the excellent Maplin machines.
The excellent Maplin machines. Yeah, they're. But at the end of the day, they are good machines. They're good starter machines. They're not an expensive machine. But you know what? If you want to start a hobby out, just from the very beginning, do you go straight in and buy a £2,000 machine, or do you buy something not quite as expensive to see if you are going to enjoy it? If you're going to go fishing, for instance, if you think to yourself, right, I'm going to take up fishing, take up angling, do you go out and spend £5,000 or $5,000 worth of equipment, and then after 2 times out, you think, I don't really like this? Metal detecting is very similar to that, and there are people who will go out and they have to have the best of the best of the best straight away. Of course they do.
Right.
But there is nothing wrong with going out and buying a metal detector for your child or for your son. I use Maplins as an example. But there are beginner machines on the market now by all different types of manufacturers, and they're not expensive. And you can get into the hobby in a relatively, when you think about it, it's not an expensive hobby, really. No. To start with, you can buy a metal detector over here for £100, which would get you a reasonably good little detector to go out playing around on the beach, going out into a field. A spade you could buy for a few pounds from a shop, and a pair of Wellington boots. And the hardest part of metal detecting, and I've said this to everybody, says to me, what do you with metal detecting, Gary, what's the hardest part of it? It's getting permission in England. It's getting permission. It's the hardest part. And you can go out and buy a machine, you can go out and buy a spade, but if you've got nowhere to go, you may as well have a car without any wheels.
Right.
It's not going to get you anywhere, is it?
Right.
And I don't know what it's like in the States, but over here, most land in this country is owned. It belongs to somebody. And you have to get permission from the landowner to be on that field.
Same here, yes. Yep.
If you don't, you're breaking the law. It's pure and simple. You're trespassing, and you're stealing if you're taking anything out. I was recently had to do a little bit on the beat. It's going to sound very big-headed, but I was asked to do a TV interview for the BBC, reference night hawking or illegal metal detecting. Okay. And the interviewer said to me, what sort of person gets up in the middle of the night and goes out and uses a metal detector on field that he doesn't have permission on? I said, there's only one word I can use. And that's thief. He's a thief. He is stealing artifacts from the ground, from land that doesn't belong, he doesn't have permission to be on. So he's a thief. There's no other way of saying it. If you go out at night with a metal detector without permission to be on that land, you're trespassing and you're a thief. And if I get chastised for saying it, I get chastised for saying it. But it's true. It's the truth. If you don't have permission, and that's the hardest part of metal detecting, Mike, is gaining the permission to be on the field in the first place.
Right.
And,
absolutely.
The machines that you can buy today, whether it's £100 or whether it's £2,000, they're all good enough to find you things. And somebody said to me once, why would you want to drive a Ferrari before you've learned to drive a Ford Escort or a cheaper car? And it's very true. You don't want to get behind the wheel of an expensive car and not know how to use it before you've learned the basics of driving.
Gary, let me chime in here real quick because I have a little difference of opinion. I was a dealer for about 8 years myself, and then I now sell through with my good friend through Digger's Den. And what I have to say about that is this. I am with you. There's nothing wrong with starting out with, a $200 name brand detector and learning the hobby. But as a dealer, I get a lot of calls that I want to do this with my detector. I want to find, at our parks and schools, you're not going to find, it's rare to find silver that's not deep. And you've had a lot of traffic there over the years. And what I tell people, I will say, either spend this much or, get started with that detector, but understand your chances of finding old silver coins is going to be limited.
I can imagine that's maybe it's different over in America than what it is over here, because the amount of finds that you can make over here, which are lying on the surface, you can find Roman coins lying on the surface in the UK because of ploughing. So, you can find, I've got a couple of fields that we go to, and the coins, Mike, are literally no more than an inch down. Some of them are just lying on the top. Almost you could make an eyes only find. They're that common. So maybe in the States, I can understand the fact that, yes, because there's not as much of decent quality finds that are relatively close, then I can completely agree with you. Yes, you need to spend a little bit more money because you need to get down in amongst the good stuff.
I just never
over here.
I just never like to sell something to somebody without them understanding, and that's all. If you just like our field sites in the Midwest where I'm from, you've got a lot of iron, and you've got to have a detector that'll work through that iron. And now you can do a cheaper detector, but you want to pick, there's one big name brand out there for starter detectors here in the United States, and a lot of people go to their first machine, and I most of the time I don't think that's a good starter machine. So I try to get you in the right thing and in your price range. But sometimes it does. I mean, if you want to do certain things, sometimes it does take spending a little bit more money, or at least understanding that starter detector, that starter price range isn't going to do what you want it to do. But hey, go out and get it and go out and have fun. Just understand it might not do what you want it to do. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. It's the detecting in the United States is a different a different ratio, I suppose, to what it is over here. If you go into a detecting shop over here for the very first time, and you don't have, you've got a budget, and you ask, what detector do I need to buy? I suppose it depends on who you are and how much you've got to spend. We've all got our budgets, and then if you spend £200 on a metal detector, it's going to find you Roman coins. It's going to find you medieval silver hammered. It's going to find you artifacts. Without a shadow of a doubt, it will. And then if you decide then that you do really love the hobby and it's something that you really want to make, your passion for the hobby starts, and what I'm talking about, because as soon as you start metal detecting, you want to be out. You want to be out every day, every single hour, every minute of every day that you've got spare. You want to be in that field, and it can cost you your marriage. It can cost you a lot because you're always in the field. You want to, what are you? So if you get that buzz and you get that feeling, then you want to start. Then you can start to look at improving your machine. And getting the feel.
Another thing with that, when you're down in the beginner price range, you've got less technical things to work with to get the machine to work. And as you go up in price range, they tend to get more technical, and you really need to learn how to use a detector. I agree with you 100%.
You've got to learn the sound. When people ask me questions, sometimes they say, Gary, what settings do you prefer? What do you do? How do you work your machine? The one thing I always say to people is you've got to learn your machine, and you've got to learn the sounds of metal detecting. Metal detecting, yes, you've got visual display screens and you've got numbers and you've got, the numbers that pop up for iron and the numbers that pop up for silver and the numbers. Yes,
Yeah.
it's all completely relative. But the first thing I say to people if they come up to me and they ask me a question about the Deus, the first thing I say to them is, right, we'll put in some settings for you that are relatively easy to understand. And then the next thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to tell you, is you take the control unit off the Deus and you put it in your pocket. And for a period of time, you just detect the old-fashioned way. Before we had visual display screens, we had headphones, and we detected on sound.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what I say to people. You go out into the field and you detect on the sound that you're hearing. And then you learn the sounds that the machine makes. You're going to dig iron. You're going to dig rubbish. You're going to dig foil. You're going to dig bits and pieces. Of course you are, but it's a learning curve, you see, Mike. You learn the machine. And then, once you've learned the sounds of your machine, it doesn't matter whether it's a Deus or whatever, you can then start to concentrate a little bit more on the technical side of things. The tweaks that you can make, the different, the different reactivities that you can change. Your audio responses, your different sounds or your different tones. You can adjust these sort of things. Mm-hmm. But the first thing you've got to learn is what your machine is telling you through your headphones. And you can probably relate a little bit like that with me on that.
Absolutely.
I can pretty much bet your first bottom dollar that your first metal detector didn't have a visual display unit, did it? It just had a sound.
Believe it or not, it did. I've had VDI detectors forever, and probably I found probably 7 or 8 years ago, and they're called something different over there. Tesoros are amazing at working through the iron in the fields, and it was really hard for me not to have that VDI. But all along, I understood you rely on your tone much more than you do your VDI. Your VDI can lie to you. Rarely does your tone lie to you.
Exactly.
And,
that's exactly it.
And
the VDI lie depending on what type of ground you've got, whether your target is next to iron or whether it's in mineralized soil, whether it's lying in the ground near something else. Like you've just said, your VDI can sometimes trick you, and you can be tricked into thinking, I don't want to dig that. But like you've just said, your tone, if you can learn your tones and learn the sounds, you can usually pick out that good tweak in amongst the bad tweaks, if that kind of makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's all about tones, for sure.
Mm. Yeah.
VDIs will lie to you. Yeah.
So there's a place for them. And
of course
there
for
is.
sure.
Sure. And I use them. You get them on the Deus. Of course you do. But you don't. If you relied on VDI constantly, you're in a world of pain. And I can give you an example of that. I was detecting one day at an organised dig, and there was a guy in front of me, and he was using the Deus, and he seemed to spend a long time to and fro over this target. And I'm thinking to myself, is he going to dig that or not? He seems to be, he's very unsure. He's taken a long time. I would have dug it by now, just out of curiosity to see what it was.
Right.
And he took a step away from the target and left it. So I quickly ran my machine over it. Well, he had his back to me, obviously, because he was walking away. And I could hear something in this sound, and there was something in the signal. And admittedly, it was a very, I use the terminology scratchy. It was a scratchy signal, but there was something in the signal that made you stop in your tracks and just start to think. Your machine made you think. And when your machine makes you think, you should always dig.
Yes.
But anyway, I walked up to this guy and tapped him on the shoulder, and he turned around and I said, look, please don't be offended by this. I said, but I saw you playing around with that target and you didn't dig it. Can you tell me why you didn't dig it? He said, oh, it's rubbish. There's nothing in there. It was the VDI number was coming out in the low 30s. I don't usually dig below 40. And I stopped him in his tracks and I said, seriously, you don't dig below 40 with the Deus? No, it's rubbish. It was rubbish. I said, well, look, do you mind coming back and I'll dig it out and we'll see what it is? I said, because I think there's something really good there. And he said, no. He said, you waste time. I said, well, why? If you don't dig anything below 40 on the Deus, I said, you do realise you could be missing Roman fibulars, cut quarters, as we call them over here, which is a hammered coin. It's been cut up.
Hey, Gary, hold on one second. There's a audio issue on my end, and I want to see if anybody else can hear it. I'm really having trouble hearing you. It might just be through my end, but
I can hear you're coming through to me loud and clear.
Okay. Whoever's listening, whoever can respond real quick, is he coming through okay, or are we having audio issues? Nobody's answering yet. Try again.
Can you hear me okay?
You're coming through. Yeah, we got a poor connection. Let me hold on one second. Are you still on Wi-Fi?
Yes, I'm still on Wi-Fi.
Okay. Yeah, your audio's bad. Keep going. Let's see what happens here.
Okay. Can you hear me all right now?
Let's. You know what? I'm going to hang up on you, and I'm going to call you right back. Let's give that a try.
No problem. Okay. No problem.
Okay. So yeah, he's muffled and everything else. So let me see if we can call and get a new connection. I apologize, guys. We've been having all kinds of issues here. Let me see if we can get him back and maybe clear up the signal a little bit. Hi, Gary.
Hi, Mike.
Oh, so much better. There we go. So
bad connection.
Yeah, so he didn't want to come back to it.
Yeah. So he basically was trying to say to me that he wasn't digging anything below a VDI number of 40, which shocked me because if anybody knows the Deus, you can get small coins, cut quarters, cut halves, Roman brooches, all coming in with VDIs below 40. So I convinced him. I said, look, come back and let's dig the target. And I'm pretty certain that there's a good target in there. And he said, no, there's nothing there at all. It's a piece of iron. But if you want to waste your time digging it, carry on. I said, well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll dig the target. If it's iron, I'll bow down to your better knowledge. I said, but if there's a good target in there, am I allowed to keep it? And he looked at me all strange. And I said, well, because it was your target originally. I said, so you give me permission to keep it. He said, look, if you want to keep a piece of iron, you carry on. So we dig the target, and there it is. There's a rusty nail, and he looks at me. He says, "T, told you." I said, we haven't finished yet." Put the probe, and the probe goes off. I said, "There's another target in there," and the target was as crisp and clear target as you'd ever wish to have. And I took it, and in my hand was what they call it over here. We call them sciata, which is a Saxon skeet, very small silver coin.
Ooh.
They're not common finds, Mike. They're quite rare. And I said to him, I'm allowed to keep this, aren't I? And he looked completely shocked. He said, well, I won't tell you what he actually said because I'm not allowed to swear. His look of dread, and I said to him, there you go. And I said, I put it in his hand. He said, no, we made a deal. I said, no, don't be so silly. I said, it was your original target. I said, but this shows you that if you're not digging below 40 and you're not putting out those signals that you are, the Deus or any machine is telling you that there is something in it. It's making you think. Do you not think it's better to take it out than risk missing something like that? And he looked at me and he said, blimey. I said, what have I missed in the past? I said, well, that's the beauty of metal detecting. You'll never know what you missed because you didn't dig it. There's no point in panicking about or worrying about what you missed because you don't it made him realise that you constantly dig on VDI, it can backfire on you dramatically. And that is an example of,
Gary, we're having issues again. I am sorry. Let me call you back again. I am plugged into a Cat5 cable. I'm thinking it might be on your end. I'm not sure because I am plugged directly in and there's no internet issues. But
do you want me to switch off? Do you want me to come off of Wi-Fi and use the?
Yeah, let's try that. Let's give that a try because something's up with audio.
A hotel Wi-Fi can sometimes be a bit iffy over here. Not very strong.
Okay.
I'll switch off.
Okay. Sorry again. We'll wait for him to. We'll give him a minute to call back, and if not, I'll call him back in. Give him a second to change that. And I am sorry, guys, for the issues. Hopefully we'll get them rectified. Andy says, "I love iffy signals." You're not kidding, Andy. Those iffy signals are usually have tended to be my best signals. I love when stuff. That's what other people have missed that won't take the time. And I'll wait till we get Gary back on. But I've kind of got some stories about that. And there's. Let me try him and see if we can get him back. And
Hi, Mike.
There you are.
Is that clearer?
Much clearer for now. So maybe it was that. Andy, my response to that is two things. I don't know. I've even met experienced detectorists who will sit there and swing, and then they'll turn 90 and they'll swing, and they'll turn 90 again. And it's like, well, why don't you just dig it? It takes it takes a minute to dig it. And my thing that has been, I've told myself this since the beginning, I will not go home and lay in bed and go, I wonder if I should have dug that. Because it'll happen.
That's exactly right. Yeah. I can relate to that.
Yeah. Dig those iffy signals. It takes a minute, and I don't understand why people will sit. You know what? They will sit. I've seen people that'll sit there and swing over a target longer than it would take just to dig it.
Exactly.
And I don't understand that.
People say to me, Gary, you're digging a lot, but that's what metal detecting is all about, isn't it? You dig sometimes. You dig those iffy signals, and it was Gary Blackwell said to me once, and it's a good phrase to remember: when in doubt, dig it out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you remember that phrase, you will dig it. If you're in any form of doubt that you've got something, a target that you're not too sure of, like you've just said, how long does it take to find out to be sure? Because I've had the odd sleepless night where I have walked past a target. I'm tired. I want to get back to the car, and I've detected a little bit quicker than what I should be. But I've come home and I've led in bed, and you're staring at the ceiling, and you think to yourself, "What the hell was that?" I really hope it wasn't. And to the point where I've actually gone back and tried to refine the target just to convince myself that it wasn't anything exceptional.
Absolutely.
It can be very, it can be a very strange feeling when you people would think you were crazy.
Do you know? I'm sorry. Do you know Tim Glick? That's part of the XP Deus USA team.
Yes, I know Tim. Yes,
he's a friend of mine, and the last time we hunted together, he dug many iffy signals, and he, of course, he runs the Deus, and he calls himself the junk man, kind of joking. If you look at that guy's collection for here in the United States, he has an incredible collection. And part of that collection is because he will dig some of that junk and those iffy signals. He's an amazing detectorist, and
it's not rocket science, is it, Mike?
No.
At the end of the day, a lot of it is laziness, where people just if they don't get that clear ping, they automatically think it's not anything special. So they'll just knock the signal or write the signal off. But you usually find that the people who find a lot of stuff are the ones who are doing all the digging, and they're not discounting
Right.
signals. The ones who find most good stuff will be prepared to dig 50 trashy pieces to find one good find. But I would rather go through 50 trashy pieces and iffy signals to get that one good coin in amongst the good ones.
And whether people are using a detector that's 100 pounds or 2,000 pounds, you often see them relying too much on their detector. You know, it's to me, it's just crazy. If you got a signal, don't go home and lay in bed and wow, the day's finally over, but now you can't sleep because you're like, oh, what was in that hole? Why didn't I dig this one?
Yeah.
It's a horrible feeling.
It is, and there's so many different reasons as to why that signal isn't as clear as what you would like it to be. There could be a lot of iron in the area, and your detector's picking up a piece of iron, and the recovery of the machine, is telling you that there's a better signal there, but it's in amongst the trash. It could be the ground is very mineralized, so the signal is going to be coming through very trashy anyway. Mm-hmm. The artifact or relic or whatever could be at a weird angle in the ground. It could be, the detector could be only picking up a certain part of it at a certain angle. It could be deep, and sometimes depth can play with your signals.
Absolutely. There's so many things.
There is.
Gary, I want to say another thing real quick that I so agree with you on, and there's this big, when I'm learning a new machine, I have three dimes buried that I want to see what kind of depth I can get on that detector. I will spend about 2 minutes there, and then you learn a detector by getting it out in the field. You're absolutely right. That's the only, I don't care how sophisticated of a garden you have. You can never make it real world like getting out there and digging amongst, digging the way things are laying in the ground. You're not going to repeat that. And get out, and here in the United States, I don't know that I would recommend it over there. Go hit a trashy park and just dig everything and start watching numbers, listening to your tones, seeing what that detector's telling you, and just concentrate on digging a bunch, not, try, because you got to learn that and what your detector's telling you. Gary, let's take a quick break for a commercial, and then when we get back, I want to get into the Deus more, if that's okay.
Yeah, by all means. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. We're gonna give us a minute and a half. I gotta give a shout out to ArchMD Mag. Great people. Check them out.
The Archaeology and Metal Detecting magazine acts as a hub for information, offering articles from archaeologists, detectorists and other specialists throughout the genre, featuring many links, event info and news articles associated to archaeology and metal detecting. We also offer professional review services and promotion for books, resources, videos, documentaries, gadgets, equipment and much, much more. The magazine is run by the archaeological and metal detecting community for the archaeological and metal detecting community. So come visit us at archmdmag.com, that's archmdmag.com, and check out information from our media section with all the latest content, news from the Archaeology channel, podcast and the YouTube channels that feature the now legendary Digger Dawn, the Man with the Hat and Archeo Duck, just to name a few. If you would like to offer an article, link or inquire about other services, then pay us a visit at archmdmag.com and drop us a line.
All right, we're back. Hey, Gary. So let's get into the Deus a little bit. I'm going to tell you a quick story. Please don't judge me, but when Deus come out, I was a dealer myself, and at that time, it was nothing for 2-3 times a week for me to get information, manufacturers from overseas wanting me to carry their products. And when I first started getting them, I'd research them, and it's like, oh, this isn't anything. Yeah, it looked nice, but when you really dug into to what they really were, they weren't anything good. And when XP come out, I just completely overlooked the XP. And I'll tell you, I'll be honest with you, for a pretty long time, nothing about it really interested me. And some of the things I heard, and I think a big part of that was some of the people that I talked to, they would have issues and this and that, and they didn't like this about it, they didn't like that. But as you saw it catch on and what people were finding, something you got to understand, if you're in the market for a metal detector, don't believe anything you hear and only half of what you see. And understand with something like the Deus, it's a technical detector, and to really get the most out of it, you're going to have to learn that detector. But if you want something that'll, one of the top machines out there, and you're patient and you can learn it, the Deus is a great choice. I've seen it firsthand. I don't personally use one, but I will tell you I am very, very impressed by them now. And that took me a long time to, we've talked about how they're expensive. They are. But also, how long has the Deus been out?
It was 2010 when the Deus first
so
came
it's been out 8 years, and these these free updates, it's like when I talk to Deus people, they're huge improvements. I've heard really good things about the updates and coils and everything else. So I think although it's
all free.
Yes, and I think when you look at overall what you get from Deus, it's not unreasonable. It's not that expensive, and so somebody who's never used an XP, what would you say about it? Tell me about the XP if you don't mind.
Well, with the Deus, for me, I've used XP for many years. I originally started with an ADX XP. I worked my way up to what they called a Goldmax Power, which was an amazing machine. Found me many, many amazing artifacts and coins and relics. Absolutely brilliant machine. And then one day I was in a metal detecting shop in the UK called Regden's, and speaking to the owner there, Nigel, very good friend of mine, and he was saying to me, "Have you seen this machine, Gary? This new XP?" And I looked at it and I thought, "Wow, it is wireless headphones, and exceptionally light." That was the first thing that drew me to it. The lightness of it. It was almost like you could pick it up with one finger.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's almost not a metal detector, if that made sense. It was so light, and I was very reluctant to start with because I was so tuned in to my Goldmax Power, my XP Goldmax Powers. And we talked about this earlier on about being tuned into your machine and knowing the sounds. I was so tuned into my machine that I was very reluctant to change. And Nigel said to me, "But you've got a program in the new Deus that is the Goldmax Power, so you've effectively got the Goldmax in there." So the Deus was this revolutionary machine that was completely lightweight. You could detect all day with it and not even realize you're holding it. And wireless headphones with the back phones, so you were free. You weren't wired up. You had no headphone wires getting in your way. You had no headphone wires that could break as you swing the machine and the wire becomes degraded. We've all been there where we swing the machine and the headphone wire gets slowly eroded because of the constant movement of the wire. So you had none of that. It was rechargeable. You could charge up the night before your hunt, and you had a good day's worth of metal detecting, if not longer, in the battery. And like you said, XP regularly update the machine via the computer, so you can download the very latest software for your remote control, and it's free, completely free of charge. Whereas sometimes you've got to buy a new machine to get the latest machine. With XP, with the Deus, you don't. They will update the software. The technicians and everybody at XP will update the software. And then send it down via your computer to a download, and you can load it onto your system. And the beauty of the Deus is the fact that if you prefer a certain version of software, you don't have to update if you don't want to.
Right.
You can, if you like. A friend of mine, Steve, me and Gary Blackwell have so much fun with Steve because he uses what we call version 2 with the Deus, which is the version 2 software. And at the moment they're on version 5.
Right.
Me and Gary have done a video with him where he's using version 2. But do you know what, Mike? He finds with it. He finds loads of stuff because he's tuned in. He's tuned into that version and he loves it. But that's what it's all about. And that's what I love about the Deus is the fact that you can pick and choose the software that you want. If you want to change your software, you can change it on your remote control. You can change your tones. You can make the tone higher, make the tone lower. You can go into there's so many different aspects with the Deus that is and the thing is you're not getting the recovery speed with the Deus is amazing. When you're in a trashy site with a lot of iron, how the machine can pick up those small targets in amongst the trash is absolutely amazing, and it never ceases to amaze me how the Deus can recover so quickly. And that was all those little things that I learned with the Deus when I first got it. To me, it was a revolutionary machine. It broke the mold with metal detecting for me personally, and there's so much with the Deus that you can do, and there's so many different aspects of its armory that are amazing.
Yeah, I want to say something. The first time I held one, it's kind of how do you say? It's a stout-looking detector. It looks rugged and durable, but when you grab it, it's like, I mean, completely joking, but you're like, did they use alien technology or what? Because this thing is so light. And something I really suspected when they first came out, when they first started really gaining ground here in the United States, I thought weighing that much, they're going to break. The shafts have to be. I do not personally know of anybody who has broke a shaft or broke a coil, and I know guys who pound them up against corn stalks.
They're something that is so light. It's a very, very strong, robust machine. And what you've got to remember, when you hold it in your hand, because of the style of the grip, the S-shaped handle, it almost feels an extension of your arm. And some machines, and you could probably back me up here, if you hold sometimes certain machines, when you hold the grip almost forces your wrist at a natural angle. So the reason why people get achy muscles in their arm is not necessarily the weight of the machine. It's the angle of which your muscles are having to work to keep that machine, to keep your coil at a level angle of the ground. So you're almost fighting the will for your wrist to go at an unnatural angle, and that's the ache that you can get. Now with the Deus, they thought about that, and if you ever hold a Deus, you'll know exactly what I mean. When you're swinging the Deus, because of the angle of the grip, you are literally, and the stem, the grip becomes an extension of your arm. So you're actually swinging and it does not feel in any way, shape, or form unnatural. And that's why people say when they detect with the Deus, they can go for days without feeling any ache or gripe in the arm, and that's the shape of that grip. That handle is almost perfect. It's an almost perfect grip, and it doesn't matter how long or short your arms are or how big your hand is. You can adjust it to suit your own personal, and it's almost become an extension, as I said before, of your arm, and that's the beauty of it, and that's why people can detect for so long with the Deus without any horrible repercussions.
Now, and I'm sure I'll ask Gary the same question, and it'll be interesting to see what he has to say when we have him on the show. So let's say I'm brand new to the Deus, and I'm getting ready to. I'm in the UK, and I'm going to field hunt. I think, that's what almost everybody does. What kind of, for somebody starting out with it, what kind of settings would you recommend?
Gary has told me this, and it's a question that I get asked quite a lot. Okay. And Deus Fast is program 3 on the Deus, I believe, okay. And it is the best. I think it's the best program for learning curve that you can have with the Deus. If you're first starting out, it's a good or bad signal effectively with Deus Fast. You get the grumble for iron, and you get the piping for dig, and it's a brilliant program to actually get to know what the Deus is, what your capabilities you can get with the Deus when you're starting out. We've touched on this before. You don't want to run before you can walk. You don't want to.
Right.
But Deus Fast will do everything that you want it to do. It's quick recovery. So if you're in a trashy area, Deus Fast is fast. It will. If you're swinging a little bit too quick, if you're getting used to the swing of the Deus, if there's a signal there, it will tell you. You can get some good depth out of Deus Fast, and it's a good audio. It's a 3-tone program. You could even, when people say I put in a program for people sometimes, and I put a 2-tone program in. I said it's a 2-tone program. It's good or bad, and that's all you need to hear really when you're detecting to start with.
Yes.
Once you start getting, once you've gone out for with the Deus, get a few hours under your belt, and you're starting to feel more confident in the machine, then you can start to tweak and change it to your own. But
okay,
but factory preset is Deus Fast is a perfect one to start.
So let's go with I've got a couple weeks on it, and I'm ready to start making some changes. What changes do you want to look at first? What am I going to change to optimize? I'm starting to learn the machine well.
Yeah. Firstly, it's your site to start with. Is it mineralized ground? Is it
right?
If you've got a Roman site, you're going to get a lot of natural iron infestation in the ground. You're going to get habitation infestation in the ground. You're going to get coke, which we call over here, which is wastage from Victorian, where they were burning coal, which can give a signal. You're going to get lots of different things that are going to affect what you change with the Deus to help you, to gain every advantage. I've always say to people, I like every advantage in my favor when I'm hunting in the field.
Yes.
And the Deus can be tweaked. So you can turn if you've got access to the high frequency coil, the white coil, you can turn your frequencies up, which are going to allow you to get in amongst of infestation, in amongst the iron. You can turn the reactivity up or down. If there's not a lot of trash in your site, then you don't really need to have a very quick recovery speed, because if there's no iron or there's not a lot of trash, the recovery speed isn't really going to make a lot of difference.
Right.
So you can lower the reactivity down, so that will help you gain a little bit more depth. Not much, but it will help. Iron volume. Well, if there's no iron in the field, then there's not you don't necessarily need to hear the iron. Now, I'm the sort of hunter, I like to hear iron. I do, because if there's iron, that means there's good signals in amongst of that iron, because if there's iron, that shows that people were around, because iron will only be in the ground if it's been put there by people,
Right,
like, you know, they've
right.
left iron nails and stuff. So I like to hear iron. So you know, if your ground is mineralized, then you can turn your sensitivity down a little bit, you know, so you don't get, if you're detecting in stubble fields where you've got stalks of stubble and your machine is bashing against them, you might want to turn your sensitivity down, so you're not getting you're not hearing the coil when it hits the stubble, you know.
Okay.
So discrimination, for instance, you might want to raise the discrimination if you're getting a lot of bits and pieces that you don't want to hear. You know, if you're in an area that is infested with coke, which is like hot rock type stuff.
Yes.
You can raise the discrimination, but what you've got to remember with discrimination is if you raise it too much, you could start to discriminate out against good stuff, which is what we spoke about with that guy having his not digging below certain numbers. You know,
Right.
I had a poor chap. He came up to me a little while ago and he said to me, Gary, I'm not finding anything with my Deus, absolutely nothing. And I said, well, you must be finding something. The law of averages dictates that eventually you're going to find something. He says, I'm not finding anything, Gary. He said, I'm not getting any signals. I said, well, there's two things here that could be wrong. A, your machine is broken, or
Right.
B, your settings are completely off the scale. So I had a look at his settings, and the first thing I noticed was he had discrimination set at 88.
Oh, jeez.
Honestly, this
no.
is not a joke. And I said to him, who put your settings in at 80? I don't know, Gary's, but I'm getting a bit disheartened with it. I said, well, I'm not surprised. I said, because you've literally discriminated against every single good find on this planet. You've discriminated out.
Right.
And, you know, I said, you might be lucky to get the odd Victorian big copper coin or something which bangs through, or a large lump of lead coming out into the 90s. I said, but at 88, my friend, you are not going to... So I lowered his discrimination right down to 5.3. And he started getting signals, and he couldn't believe the signals that he was getting, you know. And so that's the sort of thing that you can start doing, you know. You can, but what you've got to remember is when you change something, it affects something else.
Yes.
So unless you know what you're changing, and I don't want to get too complicated because Gary is the man to talk to about the real complicators. You know, I can give you the basics, and I don't want to step on Gary's toes because he is the man to talk to about if you've got any questions about what affects different things and how things can work with the Deus. Then you've got him on, that you want to have a show with Gary, because as I said before, he is the XP man.
Yeah.
I can give you the basics and build up to when Gary's going to be on. And I personally, with the Deus, hunt with a two-tone program. And it might sound very basic to you, to a lot of the people out there. Does he really? Somebody who's used the Deus for so long hunts with a two-tone program. And that's because I like good or bad, Mike.
Yeah.
I'm not. And I've done a lot of testing with the Deus, and I find that a good or bad signal, two-tone, works absolutely fine for my areas. Now, if you're in a different type, Gary's got a program that he developed himself called the Ultimate Program, and he'll tell you all about it. It's an absolutely amazing program, but you've got to know what you're listening for, and you've got to know where to use it and what to listen out for. Because if you don't, if you're tweaking and changing things and you don't know what you're doing, you can actually make things worse. Now, Gary's Ultimate Program is the Ultimate Program. It is an amazing program, and I found some fantastic things with it. But if you got to, and I've said this before, you've got to learn to walk before you can run. And the Deus is a great machine to learn with as well, because the Deus Fast program is perfect for people right the way through. You know, 6 months into using the Deus, you can still be using Deus Fast because it's a factory preset, and the engineers at XP they know what they're doing, and they put those programs in for a reason, and use the presets if you really want to.
Right.
That's what they're there for. They're proven tested, and why change why fix something that isn't broke is a good phrase to use. If it's not broke, why fix it?
Exactly. And I want to comment real quick on your two-tone. I think sometimes, especially with something so sophisticated, there's nothing wrong with simplifying it. And thankfully, like the Deus and some of the other detectors, you can really simplify them. And sometimes there's a lot to be said for simplicity. You can really get too much. You can get too much information coming into you all at once, and sometimes being able to do that is what people need to do. And so that's a great thing.
I think people overcomplicate it sometimes.
Yes.
Very much overcomplicate. It doesn't matter what machine you're using. You get people come up to you and say, what the perfect settings or the perfect tweak or I've got a, and you think to yourself, well, there isn't really no such thing, because it depends on where you're hunting and what your type of hunt. You wouldn't use the perfect settings for ground on the beach.
Right.
You wouldn't do it. You wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
You would if you have mineralized ground in an area that you're detecting, certain programs you wouldn't use. You would have to change it. And there isn't no such thing as the perfect settings. It's those settings that work at that particular time on that particular field or park that you're hunting. And the Deus has got the capabilities of being able to, you can tweak it, you can change it. But like I said, you don't want to overcomplicate metal detecting too much. At the end of the day, you're in the field and you want good or bad. Is that signal trash or is that signal worth digging? And there isn't a metal detector out there yet that can distinguish between tell you what type of coin you got. Yes, experienced detectorists will know a signal and say that's a silver dollar, or that's a silver dime, or that's a silver hammered coin in the UK, or you can tell. But then your metal detector sometimes as a way of a knack of coming back and biting you on the backside, because what you think you've heard and I bet it's happened to you many times, you've convinced yourself that signal is a silver coin, and when you've dug it out, it isn't, and you think, no, but it's not. But I was convinced it was. So there isn't the perfect settings that is going to tell you exactly
what's perfect for you. And
exactly, it's what you like to hunt with, and Mike, as well as anybody, metal detecting is all about having confidence in your machine. If you're not confident in your machine and you're second guessing yourself on every signal, you're not going to enjoy yourself, are you? You're not going to have a good fun day.
Right.
You're not going to enjoy yourself out in the field. And I've got 100% confidence in my machine that I'm not going to say that my machine is going to always find me stuff, because if it's not there, you're not going to find it. If you don't walk over it, you're not going to find it. You can have the best machine on this planet, but if you don't actually physically walk over the object to start with, you're not going to find it, are you?
Right.
You're not going to dig it out. And that's what I say to people. Some people come up to me sometimes and they say, I haven't found anything today, Gary. What's wrong with my machine? I say, absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. There's nothing wrong with your machine whatsoever. You just haven't been lucky enough to walk over it today.
Right.
You could go out tomorrow and dig 10 targets and have 10 amazing finds.
Yeah.
But just today,
exactly.
Today wasn't your luck wasn't there today. Tomorrow it could be. But that's metal detecting.
Absolutely. And something else that I notice, and I'm sure you'll agree with this. How often do you see somebody, okay, I got my Deus today. I just got it. Tell me what program I want to put in. And so many people try to start off with what people that have been using them for years have come to learn.
Oh, yeah.
And I think, I'll tell you, especially with something as sophisticated as a Deus, you don't want to do that. Learn a program and then what I tell and stress to people, and I would bet you'd agree with this, is take the time to learn your settings and what they do, how they work, what other settings they affect. You've got, and so many people don't do that. And I think, I think there's so many things that goes into making a great detectorist.
Yes.
And one is the ability to do the research and get permission. And another thing I think is huge that I find that so many people don't know what your machine does and how to adjust it for different conditions. And doing that, by doing that, what settings, how the different settings work and what they affect. And so many people don't know that. They know a program that somebody else uses online, and that's it. And then they get into some different ground or some different issues, and they're lost because they don't really know what those settings do.
Exactly, and sometimes they think that they've got the ultimate machine with the ultimate settings. So their natural God-given right is to go into a field and start finding the ultimate finds. And then when they don't make those ultimate finds, they blame the machine. They say, "Oh, the machine isn't as good as what it was all hyped up to be. The machine's rubbish. It's not giving me anything. It's not finding me anything." Well, hang on a minute. Maybe if you were to keep your coil a bit lower to the ground and not have it pointing in the direction of, satellites, and maybe if you were to slow your swing down just a tad, then you might give your detector a little bit more of a break and give it a chance to actually find you something. And B, maybe you should go and find a new field because there obviously isn't anything in there. Right, and if there's nothing in there, it doesn't matter how good your machine is. Yes. So people blame the machine too quickly. And me and Gary have had many conversations about when we go on rallies and we talk to each other and we see the people with their machines and they're swinging them at 100 miles an hour and their coils are pointing directly upwards rather than actually flush to the ground. Their coil is what we call the pendulum swing, and they look like the pendulum of a clock swinging. So they're actually not actually touching the ground. And, and they're the ones who moan that they're not finding anything. Now, detecting isn't about having the best machine you've got to have a good technique. Keep that coil to the ground. Know the sweep speed of yourself, and you slow your sweep speed down a little bit. And like you said, take time to learn what your machine is capable of, and the type of site that you're on, and do your research and look at maps and get yourself right. Okay, well, there's an old track that used to run through that's there. Well, there's an old road that used to be nearby here, and there's an old footpath. If there's a footpath that is 200 or 300 years old, then there's 200 years of people walking up and down losing things. So there's a good chance there's artifacts, there's relics there. You could be lucky. You could just walk into the nearest field that you find and get permission on and hit gold. It has happened. But then again, 90% of the time you're going to get frustrated. And let's face it, we find more bad stuff than we do good stuff.
For sure.
And metal detecting is all about controlling the good days and the bad days. And I've had more bad days than I've had good days. But when you do get a good day, it makes all the bad days go away. Mm-hmm. And it really, we've all hit barren patches. We've all done it. We've all had barren patches where it feels like we've not had anything really good for weeks and days, and you get despondent. And that usually removes I call them treasure hunters. They're treasure hunters. They're people who are in the hobby for looking for treasure. Right. And yes, we have treasure over here. Of course we do, and we find treasure. But you've got the guys who are happy to find a musket ball or happy to find an old button. Mm-hmm. And they think, but there are guys over here, if they don't find gold in the first 2 weeks of metal detecting, then it's a rubbish hobby. And the metal detectors are rubbish and everything else. And you see them on the forums, going on about, oh yeah, that machine's rubbish. It's not found me anything. Well, look at yourself first.
Yeah, exactly.
Look what you're doing with the machine, and look where you're hunting as well. Makes a big difference. It really does. Especially over here in the UK. You can have one field it's got nothing in it. But the field next door, it's full of Roman coins. And you think to yourself, well, how can that field have loads of stuff in it, but that one hasn't? It's because back in the day, that field might have been a forest or a wood. And, you know,
yeah, things have changed, you know, and I know you'll get this because you love history, but you've got to imagine it back then. And you might, I mean, obviously we can't do it, but I think after detecting, obviously you can. Like you said, a lot of people wouldn't think of that, but you know, why is nothing? Heck, that could have been a swamp.
exactly.
You don't
Exactly.
know.
And I've always called my metal detector a time machine. My metal detector is a time machine. It takes me back in time, and it takes me back. And you can, by hunting a field and detecting a field, you can then go back in time on that field. You can, if I go into a field and I find 2 or 3 Roman coins, my mind starts to wander. It starts, whilst I'm detecting, I start to imagine what this field was 2,000 years ago. Was it a farm? Was it a farmstead? You know, was it an arable field like it is today? Was this where the slaves from the local villa were working in the fields for the, you know, was there a Roman army camp nearby? Was this a field where, you know, was it a settlement? Was it a Roman village or a Roman town? And because if there's Roman coins in there, then there's a chance it could have just been somebody wandering by and lost. But if you start to find more and more Roman coins in the same field, then, and there's clusters of them.
Yeah, something's up.
Something's there. Exactly. Something's there. You can build a picture up of that area. And a metal detector is a time machine. You know, not a time machine like the DeLorean in Back to the Future.
Right.
But it's a time machine it's a thinking time machine. You can go back in time in your head by holding something that you've just found. And you are holding something like I keep using Roman coins as an example, but you pick up a Roman coin, it's 1,800 years old, and your mind can go back and imagine what this field was like 1,800 years ago. You know?
And I'm sure...
You know, sorry, Mike, yeah.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, and, you know, you might hunt a field, and by the end of the day or a couple weeks hunting it, you kind of have an idea maybe where houses were or where they gathered, or
right.
It's really an amazing thing. I hunted a site a couple years ago, a field site, and one of the things I noticed right off the bat was how big the debris field was. Like what I call ground zero is where all the iron is. And it was huge. And, you know, we're finding stuff like, large cents were coming out pretty good. A couple good silver coins, a 1794 large cent, which was the second year that those were minted. You know, the first American coins. Yeah. And you started getting a picture that, you know, these people had money and this was a big house. And I, you know, probably everybody's bored listening to me talk about the mid 1800s here, but, you know, a great site for us over here. And, my friend found, a couple tools that were we didn't even know what they were. And through research, we found out those were tools that doctors would use. And then it kind of all brought it together, and we were finding some kid stuff, you know. And so it's like, here lived a doctor in this big house way out in the middle of this field. He had kids because we're fine, you know, and you get a picture. You can at least get an idea in your head of what their life was like and how they lived. That's and what they're, you know, it's a really neat thing for me.
And exactly, and that's your time machine, isn't it? That is your time. That's your way of going back in time, but not physically going back, but mentally going back in your head. And you can picture, you know what American farmsteads or small towns were like by what you see in books, and you can then picture what you see in a book into your field. And it's very similar in the UK. You know, we know what Roman settlements look like. We know what medieval settlements look like by the history books that we see. And then when you start to find a cluster of medieval artifacts in coinage, you can then start to picture the medieval huts or the medieval houses, and you can then start to imagine, you know, the roads coming in and out of where you are. So at the moment you're just looking at a blank field, but 700 years ago that could have been a Saxon settlement or a village, and
absolutely.
And everything's long since disappeared underground. But, you know, once I've got a field that I know has produced some things, I will then go on to Google Earth, and you can go through the different times on Google Earth, and you can see crop marks in the fields. You know, certain times of year, if photographs are taken and it's very dry, you can actually see the outlines of buildings that you can't see physically stood on the ground, but you can see them in through aerial photographs. Yes. And you can then think, there you go, there's an old trackway or there's an old building. That's why I'm finding things, because obviously the footings of the building have long since been buried by 2 or 3 inches or maybe more of dirt. But the actual wooden buildings themselves have long since rotted away. But the actual foundations are still there, and the markings in the ground will still be there. And you can pick that up. And then you think, right, okay, now it's making sense. Now I can see why it's happening, and I can then start to picture what those buildings would have looked like in my head. And you can then start to expand your search a little bit, you know. And in England, we've got so many old villages and towns that are centuries old, and you can detect the fields between churches. That's why the churches, the spires and the were so high, and they were usually built on high ground, because back then they didn't have road signs or satellite navigation that we've got to get us from A to B.
Right.
They would walk from church to church, but they needed to see the church to know what direction.
Oh, that's interesting. Never thought about that. Yeah, that's
so. The churches always had a spire, a steeple, if you call them steeple, or spire, with a bell in the top. And it was usually the church was usually on the high ground. And that was because if you were in a neighbouring village that had your church and you wanted to go and see your friends or sell some wares to that particular village, nowadays you jump in your car and you go down the road and you follow the signs. It's this way, 2 miles, you know, and you follow your signs. And then we got satellite navigation now, which makes us even more lazier. But back then, if you couldn't read or write, so you couldn't, and there's no signs up. You might have had the odd sign that said London for 200 miles that direction.
Right.
You didn't actually know which way to go. So what you did was I wanted to go to my village in the distance. You looked in the distance, and there's the church on the hill, and there's the steeple. So you just walked towards the church.
Mm-hmm. That's
and
brilliant.
It got you to where you want. And then what you can then do, you see, Mike, is jump 200 or 300 years into the future, or 500 years into the future. And if there's fields now in between the line of sight between those two churches, there's a damn good chance that people were walking across those fields to get from one church to the next. So then you can hunt that line, as it were, that diagonal line between the two churches. You can hunt in those fields and search and detect in those fields, and there's a good chance that people would stop and have a rest and sit down, and their coins would fall out of their pocket, or they would lose it, and then you can find your art. And I found many artifacts and things by following the line between two churches.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
That's how people got around back then.
And I'm sure you've come across sites because there's no church in any kind of line of sight.
Yeah,
the village is now gone, and hey, there's a high spot out there, and I would assume. And
well, we've got in the UK, we look for what they call abandoned medieval villages, and what we mean by that is it during the plague, when the plague hit Britain, nobody knew how the plague was spread. The doctors had no idea, and they didn't know what it was. It's this evil disease, this biblical disease that was killing people by tens of thousands.
Hey, Gary, real quick, I want to say it's funny you bring that up, because I wanted to tell you, everybody talks about Roman finds and medieval, and that's all really cool, and I guess that is, but I would love to find something from the plague, the Great Plague.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but that just fascinates me. But go ahead. I'm sorry I interrupted.
Yeah, no. And we have villages that were abandoned, medieval villages is what we call them. And the reason why they were abandoned, there's thousands of them across Britain. And there's many, many, many of them that have never even been discovered. And, we sometimes discover them by mistake as metal detectors, And what we mean by an abandoned village was if the plague appeared in a village, they would all up sticks, burn the village down, and then move on to the next village and leave that village where it was. And unfortunately, what they were doing is they were spreading the plague by doing that.
Right.
Because they didn't realize that the plague was spread through touch or through sneezing. Hence the song we have in the UK called Ring a Ring a Rosies.
Yeah.
And the song goes, a ring of rosies, a pocket full of posies, a tissue, we all fall down. Mm-hmm. And that was basically, you sneezed and then you died. And that was because the disease was spread by like sneezing and coughing and people breathing in the air that was breath, and by moving from one village to the next, the plague was spreading like wildfire across the UK.
Yeah.
So instead of isolating the people in that village and stopping them like they would nowadays, like if you had a pandemic in the UK, in the world now, they would try their hardest to isolate the disease to stop it from spreading. They didn't. It just got worse and worse and worse. So of course, there's thousands of these villages now that as detectorists, you sort of like, it's almost like the Holy Grail to find an abandoned medieval village in one of your fields.
I imagine, yeah.
Because you're going to find artifacts and relics and coins aplenty from that village. You don't know how, the village might have only had 2 or 3 dozen houses in it, but if it had been there for 100 years or so before the plague hit, there's a good chance that you're going to find lots of amazing artifacts and coinage in and around that.
Yeah. Have you ever come across one?
I have, yes. I've got a couple of my sites have got medieval villages in. We know that. And one of them is actually named on a map as well now. So,
wow.
So yeah, we've come across 2 or 3. Me and my friends have got at least 2 or 3 abandoned villages in areas where we detect. I've got one site that has got Roman settlement on, Iron Age settlement as well, Celtic settlements. There's a lot of them in the UK. A lot of the fields are barren. When we say barren, there's nothing there. But I'm very lucky that over the years I've managed to secure hunting rights and digging, and metal detecting rights to go onto fields that have got some exceptionally good history on them. Good settlement.
Yeah.
And that's what you need to find. The settlement areas, people where people would go in about their everyday business. There's one particular site I can that always springs to mind, and it's produced finds from right the way across history. I've found work flint right the way up to modern coinage and everything in between. So obviously it's a site that is always been
right since the beginning of time, pretty much.
Yeah, people have been living there. There could have been there's a river nearby or a stream, and they settled by the rivers because they needed water. Let's be honest. It's the giver of life, isn't it? Water. Without water, we all die. So if you can live near a stream, a natural stream where water's coming out the ground, you're laughing. Natural well, you're perfect. And you usually found that when the Romans left, the Saxons and the people who invaded Britain after would start to take over settlements where the Romans had already once lived. And that's what we've got here. We've got an exceptionally good site that we find amazing artifacts in, Mike. We've had some incredible coinage and artifacts over the years from a couple of these sites. Last year I found what we called a medieval gold noble, which is a big medieval coin. It's about 800 years old and it's gold.
Wow.
It's I can still imagine. I can still remember the feeling that I had when I first saw
I bet.
it. It was an unbelievable feeling to see this gold coin sticking out the ground. And when I picked it up, I looked at it, and it was an Edward III gold noble, and it was a big coin, and it was 800 years old, gold coin. It's an amazing feeling, amazing.
I'm sure I can only imagine. One day, Gary, I'm going to find myself over there. Since you mentioned that coin, tell me some of your other favorite coins and artifacts you've found over the years.
Yeah, I love finding my most favourite period of history is what we call the Dark Ages, which is the Saxon period, is the period when the Romans left, and the Saxon tribes coming across from Eastern Europe sort of area were coming across. Saxons, they were invading Britain then. They were attacking the churches and doing the Viking raids type thing. This Dark Ages is a period in time that I love. Saxon period with King Alfred and King and Athelstan and King Canute. Those sort of people, the early Anglo-Saxons, what we call as the forebearers of modern day English.
These were more tribes.
They were tribal. We almost went backwards when the Roman period is in Britain. We almost went back to not living in wood in brick villas. We started going backwards into huts again, and it took a couple of hundred years for us to start to sort of progress forward when the Normans invaded. 1066. And you had William invade, and we started to then evolve, a little bit more than what we were. But the Saxon period is my favourite, and I've had some Saxon coins that I found. The details on them are just amazing. The coins are a work of art in themselves.
Right. Right.
The Saxon coins are works of art, and I've had some Saxon silver strap ends which have like zoomorphic animals, magical animals on them, and it's just beautiful is the only word I can describe. I've had some amazing Roman artifacts over the years, lots of Roman fibular brooches, Roman jewelry. I found a Roman gold ring once as well. It went through the treasure process and was returned to me. No museum wants. So yeah, I've got a Roman gold ring. Some amazing Roman everyday things, nail cleaners, Roman tools. It's the everyday working things that the Romans were using. Medieval coinage, plenty of silver hammered coins. I've got that one gold hammered that I found, and that's like you ask most metal detectors what's the holy grail of metal detecting, and one of them would be a gold hammered coin.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure.
I've known guys who've been detecting for over 30 years and have never found one. So I class myself as exceptionally lucky to have one.
Yeah. For sure.
Roman silver coins, denarius, are very good finds to have. Roman siliqua, silver coins, they're called siliqua, which are a little bit later in the Roman period. The denarii silver coins were early part of the Roman period. I have got a coin of Julius Caesar as well that I found.
That's neat.
Yeah, that's that's a good one, and I've also got one from Brutus as well.
Oh, that is so cool.
Yeah, he was the commander of the Roman legions. The Roman navy. So my Brutus hammered denarii has got a ship on the back.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah,
I'd love to see pictures of all of this.
I'll send you some.
I would love that.
There's a few guys who might listen to this who will probably be laughing because I do like to talk about it a little bit. The oldest thing I ever found artifact-wise, apart from your flints, work flints.
Yeah.
But the oldest metal object I've ever found. I don't know if you're aware of. Do you know what a pal stave axe head is, Mike? The pal stave axes that we find in the UK.
No.
They date back to like Iron Age and Bronze Age, and they're axe heads made of bronze. So they would.
Okay. Yeah. Most people just call them bronze axes, correct?
Bronze, yeah, they're bronze axe heads. There's lots of different types. You've got pal stave axe heads. You've got socketed axe heads. Well, anyway, I was detecting one day with my friend Steve, and I get this absolutely ridiculously loud signal to the point where it almost blows your head off, coming through on the headphones. And I looked at the machine, and it was like mid 90s on the VDI, so I knew it was something. I initially thought it was a large lump of lead, and I dug down a couple of centimeters and looked down. And I thought, well, that doesn't look lead to me. That looks bronze. And when I first picked it up, I thought, I've got a Bronze Age axe head. Wow, they're quite rare to find. They're not everyday items to find. So I thought, great, I've got one. But then when I looked at it, I thought, well, that's the strangest looking axe head I've ever found. And I showed it to my friend Steve, and he looked at me and he said, bloody hell, Cookie, do you know what you've got there? I went, is it what I think it is? And he goes, yeah. It's the actual mould that they use to make the axe heads.
Oh, that's better than the axe head.
Exactly. It's unbelievably rare. I believe that the British Museum has only got 3 examples of them in the museum.
Oh, amazing.
And it is the actual mould that they use to pour the molten bronze into to make the axe head itself. So it's exceptionally rare find. And it was dated to about 1700 BC.
Oh, my goodness. Now, is that in a museum now, I take it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I donated it to a local museum in Wiltshire called Devizes Museum. So when you think that is over 3,000 years old.
Yeah. How incredible is that? Yeah, and to think, that's, I know we talked a lot about history, but that's where, the history just fascinates me. These guys could do that long ago. Amazing.
And to hold that, to put it into perspective with something like that, the Romans invaded Britain when they first arrived just before about 50 BC, but they left and they didn't invade properly. It was a disaster. But the second invasion, which did work, was something like 40 odd AD. So if you think about, to put it into perspective, that Bronze Age axe mould was lying in the ground for nearly 1,600 years before the Romans ever invaded Britain.
Wow. How incredible is that? That is just
the mind-blowing part, because the Romans invaded Britain, 1,800 years ago nearly. Mm-hmm. But that mould was lying there for that amount of time before they invaded.
Right. That's
pretty amazing.
I would love to just hold that in my hand. Like, give me 30 seconds, put it in my hand, let me take a picture. Somebody take a picture of me holding it, and I'd be a pretty happy camper. That is just amazing.
It
wow.
is, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's an amazing feeling to know that when I picked it up, I was the very first person, as far as I know, unless someone's picked it up in the meantime and thrown it down, not realizing what it was. But right. I'd like to think in my own head that I was the first man to hold that since that man or woman lost that over 3,000 years ago.
And then you've got to wonder, that mold was so important at the time, I'm sure. Like,
that was his life. That was his work.
Yeah.
That was how he lived and survived. He made axe heads for people.
So did he throw it out because the mold was wore out, or was he trying to run from something and he lost it? Was he? What happened?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, Mike, isn't it? It's about
Yes.
all history and working out history is guesswork. It's the $1 million question. Was it a ritual burial? Did he bury it because he was trying to appease the gods? And because it was so important to him, because that thing was his life. That was how he earned a living. That was how he fed his family or himself. Because that was so important to him, it was the most important thing in his life. To him, if he buried that and gave it to and offered it to the gods, it would be they would look favorably on him. Possibly, it could have been a loss. He could have just been walking along and it fell out. It could have, and he dropped it, and then, that would have been a disaster.
Right, absolutely a disaster.
Or like you say, it didn't look like it was. It degraded to the point where he couldn't use it, because you could literally make one with it now if you wanted to.
Oh, wow.
It was that perfect. And in fact, the museum are making a replica of an axe head from the mold. They're not using the actual mold. What they're doing is they're making a copy of the mold, and then they're going to make an axe head from the mold, so they can see what the axe head would have looked like. And I've thought about this many times, and I thought, how cool would it be if there's an axe heads in people's collections that have been found in the area, and if you could put that axe head into the mold.
No kidding, Gary. That is, yeah. I have a huge favor to ask, and I'm sorry to bother. Will you please, if you send me no other picture, send me a picture of that mold?
Of course I will.
And I got one other request. When they make when they make that axe from that mold, I know it's not that mold, but from that reproduction, please send me a picture. Yeah. I would absolutely love that, Gary. That is just incredible. Gary, we need to move on.
Yes, I've got to get up in the morning, so I need to.
Well, I still, if I can, and we can make it quick, I got two more questions I want to get to. Luke's yelling at me that we got to talk about the Rodney Cook Memorial Hunt.
Oh, right, yes, the Rodney Cook Memorial Hunt. Without going into, my father was an exceptionally amazing man, like all our fathers are, mostly.
Right.
We all idolize our fathers, and we all, and I was no exception. My dad wasn't just my father, he was my best friend. We did everything together. We played in the same football or soccer team, as you call it in America. We did many things together as father and son, but we also did things as friends. And with metal detecting, my dad would sometimes come out with me in the field, and he occasionally got the metal detector out. But he liked to do the digging, bless him, which was good for me. And he contracted cancer about 2.5, 3 years ago. And he fought it like he would, because he would never let anything beat him. And he told me he was going to fight it to the very end, and he did. Unfortunately, we lost him about a year ago. It was a year ago on last Sunday that we lost him. And some of my friends from the metal detecting club that I belonged to, knew my dad, and they knew him very well. And they wanted to do something in his memory. And so what we decided to do was to hold what we call in the UK a metal detecting rally, which is where so many metal detectorists all get together in a field, and we detect for the weekend, and we have a few beers, and we have a few laughs, and we have we just and what I wanted to do was to raise some money. So rather than charge people and then keep the money that like businesses do, there's a lot of metal detectors, fantastic groups out there who organise digs, and it gives people the chance to go on to to metal detect sometimes, because like I said to you before, very difficult to get permission. So these groups do an amazing job. But I wanted to donate the money that we made from this rally to charity. So the obvious charity was the cancer care unit in the local hospital that looked after my father. They're amazing people. Words cannot express how wonderful these people are. And a lot of money gets put into cancer research and treatment. But what breaks down is when it's the in-between stuff, it's the beginning, middle, and end. The beginning, when you first get told you've got cancer, and your denial,
right.
the anger, and these people look after you. They sit you down. They help you when you're having your treatment. And then, unfortunately, if the worst case scenario, if you pass away, they look after your family. They help you. They talk to you if you want to talk to somebody. So we wanted to raise money for the new cancer care unit that's being put up in the local hospital. So it came about like that, and it grew. It grew and grew and grew. And as it was advertised on the forums and in the local magazine and in the metal detecting magazines like the Searcher magazine, who I write for, it grew and grew to the point where we had over nearly 400 people booked and paid for on this rally. And it happened last weekend, and we were on some exceptionally good land. We were near a Roman town. Everybody was excited about being on this site, and they all paid a certain amount of money each to have the pleasure of being there for 3 days. We had a bar, we had food, we had pizza wagons, we had live entertainment, we had a band, we had a comedian was going to come. We had lots of things going on. It was a fun weekend. It was a different type of metal detecting rally. It was a group of, it was like a family is the only word I can. There was no arguing about metal detectors and no test beds and people saying this machine's better. It was a like the camaraderie. It was a gathering of a clan, as you could say, of like-minded, and we were all there to celebrate the life of my father. Some people didn't know him. People turned up, and we laughed, we cried, we had a great. People were coming up to me and crying. This reminded me of my dad, and when you did your speech, about what you were doing, and it was just an amazing weekend, Mike, and it was just, words cannot explain the generosity that the metal detecting fraternity in the UK have given me. I've got some amazing friends in this hobby, and there's companies in England like Leisure Promotions, run by an amazing friend of mine called Pete Turrell. He took it over the business from his father. He was so generous. He gave me raffle prizes, really good raffle prizes, metal detectors to give away. Regden's metal detectors in the UK, in Birmingham. Nigel and Marcus Ingram. Nigel and Marcus, very close friends of mine. Again, the generosity was incredible. All the metal detecting shops. There's Luke Mahoney from Joan Allen. Again, exceptionally generous. A really good guy. The guys from Crawford Metal Detectors, detector bits. Everybody gave me these amazing prizes so we could have raffles. And at the end of the day, we haven't got the final figure yet because it's still being counted and the donations are still coming in. But at the moment, the running total is around about £27,000 raised.
Wow. That is just incredible.
It is, isn't it?
And it's
very humbling.
And the fact that everybody came together and there wasn't any putting down of detectors, and it sounds like a fun gathering.
It was an amazing weekend, and we've had so many messages on Facebook of people giving me the support and telling me what a wonderful weekend it was, and everybody was so friendly, and that's what we wanted to do, Mike. We wanted to go that extra mile for people coming to this rally, because we wanted, the be all and end all of the rally was to come in metal detect and have a good weekend, but we were also celebrating the life of an amazing man, and we were raising money for a very, very good cause. Mm-hmm. And the generosity goes no bounds. The people who'd already paid to go on the weekend were also donating money. You know, my wife and some of her friends had baked a lot of cupcakes and muffins and cakes and different things, and had a cake stall. And this one particular guy came up and he said to Lisa, my wife, he goes, "Oh, how much are the cakes? I'd love a chocolate muffin." And she goes, "Well, they're donating. You know, if you want to put a pound in a tin." And he looked at her and he went, "A pound? You want me to pay a pound for a cupcake?" He goes, "Don't be so silly, young lady. This is an amazing rally." And he put a £50 note.
Oh,
£50
wow.
into the pot. He said, "I'm giving you more than a pound." He said, "Here's a £50 note." And that's the generosity of what the people were doing over the course of the weekend, you know?
That's amazing. It has to feel, I'm sure it was a lot of work, but it has to feel amazing that you, as good as they treated you and your dad, how you can give back. And then Gary, I think that is great. I'm hoping that there will be another one next year.
We are, we're getting asked all the time, "Can you please hold another one next year?" And I would probably say there's a 95% probability that we will.
Good.
One of the members of our club, his grandson suffers from leukemia. So the Rodney Cook, we call ourselves the Rodney Cook Memorial Rally organisers. So we're probably going to keep that name because obviously it's the Facebook page and everybody knows us as that.
Right.
So we're going to probably do another one next year, but raise money for the Children's Leukemia Ward in the local hospital, which I think you'll agree is another worthwhile cause.
Absolutely. Gary, that is just brilliant. And
see if we can top this year's amount, but next year, see if we can get it.
Hey, thank you for taking your time and everything to do. I mean, I know it's special to you, to your heart, but I know that was a lot of work. And that's still amazing you're doing. I mean, that's just incredible, and I think that just speaks volumes to what kind of person you are. That's amazing, Gary.
It's all of my. I couldn't have done it without all my amazing friends. You know, I've got some amazing people in the club that I belong to, and they all gave up their time and their energy. One particular man in particular, I need to point out, is a very good friend of mine called David Crisp, and the work that man did to get it off the ground was nothing short of amazing. And he was my rock. He was my backbone. He was the man who got things done. And without him, we wouldn't be having this conversation now, Mike, about it, because I cannot talk highly enough of Dave, because he's just an amazing individual, and he's a bubbly guy. He's always smiling. If you're feeling down, he'll pick you up. And he got so involved with this that it was just, he drove us all forward all the time. You know, if we hit a block or a barrier, Dave would push through. Dave, you know, we're powering on. You know, we're powering through it. We'll do it. Don't worry. We'll get there.
That's amazing.
And he did. And he was, I cannot speak highly enough of the man. And I will forever be in his debt for it, because a lot of people's lives are going to be changed because of it. And it's hard work, but you know what? I can understand why these people who do a lot of charity work, it's almost like a drug.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
When you realize that what you've done is helping people, and it's helping people who have got this most evil disease on the planet, and by being able to help people with this disease, it's an amazing feeling, Mike. It's a very to give back something is an amazing feeling, and it's a buzz, and it gives you that buzz, and the whole week, you know. And yes, if you want to ask me if I'll do it again, of course I will.
Good,
definitely. 100%.
Good. Luke said, let's do a live podcast next year at the Rodney Cook Memorial.
That would be amazing. That would be cool.
Yeah, I would love that. The only
live
thing
from the field.
the only thing that would be better is to come over and meet you, but I don't know that it'll happen. I'm not sure.
What would be better would be you actually at the rally for the weekend, Mike.
Yes,
Be there with
absolutely.
Gary,
I'm just blown away that you guys put all that work into it and given back, and I am sure they're so appreciative, and just what a great cause, and
it's a great feeling. It's a great feeling.
I'm sure, yeah.
You know,
Yeah, and you don't.
There's too much hate in the world. There's too much nastiness in the world. There's too much, the world is it's. I know I'm not naive enough to know that we're never going to have this utopia, this amazing utopian planet.
But we can all do a little thing.
But we can all do a thing. Yeah, if we can we all did something little. And in the big scheme of things, the rally that we did, yeah. But do you know what? When I go to bed at night, I can have a little tear for my father, but I can also think that his memory is being... And the one thing I didn't tell you is that when we, on the Sunday, we had the people from the hospital there during the day. They had their flyers and their banners out, and they were talking to people about what the cancer care unit is all about. Mm-hmm. The lady come up to me and she said, "Oh, just to let you know," she said, "we're so overwhelmed of what you've done and the amount of money that you raised. There's going to be a new cancer wing built within the hospital, and we're naming one of the rooms after your father."
Oh, how amazing is that?
So the room is going to be called the Rodney Cook Memorial Rally Room.
Oh, wow. That is amazing.
Yeah.
That is
so
amazing.
My dad will always be there. He'll always be there.
That's incredible.
Yeah, that really did set the waterworks on.
Yeah, we got to change the subject. I've got tears in my eyes, and I am way
to get to bed in a minute.
Yeah, way too big. Gary, I know we're going way too long. I have one more question. We can make it quick and I'm done. I am so sorry. I know you got a big day ahead, and are you writing the searcher? Tell me, can you share with me about that quickly?
Yeah, by all means. I write articles for the searcher. I wouldn't really class myself as a field reporter for the searcher. I do the odd metal detecting article. I cover rallies for them. Sometimes Harry Bain, the editor, will ask me if I want to go to a rally anywhere in the country, and then I'll do a report for the magazine on the rally and what things we find. I've done articles on different things that I've found, different articles on the dais. Gary Blackwell asked me sometimes if I can do a report on a new coil or the new software that is coming out. And
so you really just do it all.
The articles could be, about the mold, for instance, or the gold coin that I found, an article about that. I could do a report. I could do a write. I recently wrote one that is in this month's edition of the Searcher. It's about the Bourne Valley Hoard, which is a recent hoard of Roman coins that was found, and I was very privileged to be in the field as it was found, and I was even more privileged to actually watch it being excavated by the archaeologists and seeing them professionally dig out of the ground a pot of Roman coins that was buried 2,000 years ago by a man or something.
Wow.
We don't know the reason why he put them there. It could have been ritual. It could have just been because he wanted to protect his investment from people stealing it. You just don't know. And that's the beauty of metal of history, isn't it? It's all guesswork, like I've said before. So, but I was watching this being excavated, taking photos, and I wrote up a report in the magazine on when the find was made to the time it was taken to the museum. And the one thing it did do is it showed metal detecting in a very, very good light, because sometimes metal detecting in the UK can get a bad press.
Yeah.
We've had our ups and downs in the UK with archaeologists. In the old days, they didn't like us very much. They thought we were we were robbers. They thought we were thieves. We were just in it for digging up and destroying archaeology. Whereas we're a lot more to it than that. Yes, you've got bad eggs in the hobby, but what hobby doesn't have a bad egg? But there are exceptionally good guys in this hobby. A lot of archaeological finds that have been made over the last 20 years have been found by metal detectorists, and they'd still be in the ground if it wasn't for us. So this, though, showed how it should be done. The man who found it, the two guys who found it, Tony and Paul Hunt, they did the right thing. They didn't dig it out with spades and hack it out the ground, which would have been a disaster.
Right.
Not just for them personally, but for the hobby in itself.
Yeah.
And for the dig organized. The man who organized the dig is a friend of mine called Steve Hendridge. He runs a group called Detectorist Investigation, and they did everything the right way, Mike. They stopped dig. They didn't dig any further. They recovered the find. We rang the archaeologist. They sent out a team of experts the following day from the museum, and they dug it out professionally. And they can learn so much more by doing that. They can learn. They can learn out why it was there, who put it there. They didn't damage the pot. They can learn a lot about the area the pot was in, where it was put, how it was cut into the ground. So much information can be gained by doing that, so people can get a better picture of the type of people that there was living in that area at the time. So, and it made detecting come across as a very, very good light. Detecting was shown that it was done the right way.
Right.
It was dug. Everything was done, and the archaeologists
how it should have been. It
was a textbook dig. I suppose is the right word. From the man finding it with the metal detector to calling in the experts, being dug out of the ground, taken to the museum, it's excavated correct, and it's being the coins are being cleaned, and the knowledge that they're going to get from that is second to none.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. So, that is great, Gary. I know we're at 2.5 hours, right?
It's amazing how time flies.
Yeah. I feel like we could do a whole nother show next week, but we'll give you a little bit of time to recover. And I would love to.
If we could have another meeting sometime in the future, if you want.
Gary, I would love that. I'm going to say something right now to my listeners and everything else, and this is horrible to say, but I've got to admit, and it's nothing against my guests from the United States on my Monday and Tuesday night show. I have enjoyed doing this show and talking to everybody over in the UK so much more. And I think it's because it's new to me. It's I've never been there, and I love history, so I get to hear about a much older history and stuff. And but I have had some great guests, and Gary, thank you so much for coming on.
You're more than welcome.
You were amazing, and I would love to have you again.
Yes, I would love to. It'd be a pleasure. I'd love to come back on again.
Great.
And I look forward to hearing my mate Gary's, chat with you when he comes on. Is it next week? So
I don't think it's next week. I don't know. I got to talk to him. I got to see Luke's got. But here soon. Yeah, he's definitely at the top of my list, and we'll get him on, and we'll let you know. Yeah.
He's another fantastic guy to talk to.
Absolutely. Me. Yeah, the little bit I've talked to him, wonderful man. So, Gary, please have a safe trip to the United States.
Yes, thank you.
Hey, I hope you get to do some detecting in Georgia, because that's where you're going to find those. Real good chance to find some Civil War. I hope somehow somebody can make that happen.
One day, Mike.
Yeah,
one day,
sure.
I will go Civil War relic hunting.
Absolutely.
It's something I really want to do. But anyway, it's been a pleasure, Mike. Thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you so much for coming on, Gary. It was just a blast. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, mate. You take care.
You too. Good night.
Good night,
well,
mate.
There you have it. I'll tell you what, I really am. I am really enjoying doing this, doing the UK podcast. It has just been amazing. I mean, here we are again, 2.5 hours, and I could go on forever. What the knowledge that you guys have shared, the people that have been on, and The stories have been incredible. If you enjoy, excuse me, if you've enjoyed this show as much as I have, I've got a favor. Please share it. Tell your friends about it. You can easily grab a link, share it on Facebook. Anything to help get the word out there is so much appreciated. Hit the like button. I appreciate it, and looking forward to next week, and thank you all for coming.